what's happening? Welcome to Indie Invasion / Coastal Con podcast YouTube video channel. We are thrilled to be back with yet another interview. This one is going to be about, as you figured, another independent game, but this one is called Pulp City. I'm here as usual with my co-host, partner in crime, general purchaser of miniatures, drinker of coffee, and member of Hydra. Say hello, Eric.
Hey guys, what's going on?
And we are joined today by Leon Mallet, one of the, well, we're going to get into what exactly role he is in the Pulp City universe and world and everything. But I want to start out with saying hello, Leon, and thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Say hello to our listeners.
Thank you very much, William and Eric. I'm very, very pleased to be here. Very, very pleased to be talking about Pulp City, and welcome from locked down UK in the West Midlands.
Yes, locked down.
And we have a cat behind us already.
That is excellent, because we have actually had multiple cat encounters in several other interviews. I believe James,
mine included.
Eric's cat often joins us, and James's cat from the Drowned Earth has also been known to join us on occasion. So
it's part of the rite of passage.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I have dogs, and they're much louder than cats, so mine have to go outside and be locked up before we get started. But anyway, Eric, you want to fire off with the first question, man?
Yeah, I want to start off, Leon, asking you, how'd you get started in gaming, in the world hobby? I mean, was there a particular game that kind of sucked you into it?
Yeah. So I kind of, my gaming history goes back to the early '80s. I started gaming in our equivalent to your high school, I guess. Since then, the UK education system has changed dramatically, so I don't know what all the different grades mean these days. But at that time, I kind of made a group of new friends, because I went to a different school than most of my previous school friends went to. So I had to make a load of new friends, and in that there was a group of gamers who kind of got together, and that's kind of where it started for me. So we sort of D&D and stuff like that. But then the miniatures gaming came in with Warhammer Fantasy Battles 2nd edition. I don't know if either of you were familiar with it back then.
Oh,
so
yes.
About 86, yeah.
That was
absolutely. And you remember like that red bordered box. And in there, if you remember in the back, in one of the appendices, you could create your own characters in there. So we used to do all that kind of thing. But I actually had the idea back with that Warhammer Fantasy Battle sort of 2nd edition to use it to create superhero characters. And we even tried that out using old like Grenadier Champions figures at the time. So, that was kind of my starting point. Then in games like Champions, DC Heroes, Villains and Vigilantes. You might notice a theme emerging here.
I'm kind of getting that feeling of, I'm expecting at any moment for you to bust open your shirt and have a big S on it at this point. Or maybe a P for Pulp City.
Yeah, I've gone for Elvis today, so. It's no, I mean, so that was kind of my gaming history. And then obviously on to Games Workshop. Primarily 40K. I actually worked for Games Workshop in one of their stores for a few years. 40K was my bag, even though I loved playing Warhammer. And then I kind of drifted out of the hobby. I went off, did my training to become a nurse, and sort of drifted away from the hobby. Eventually drifted back, as a gateway drug was Warhammer 40,000 once again. And then kind of discovered in the mid-2000s that there was this whole plethora of indie games sort of emerging then. So I became aware of the likes of Confrontation and other games that sort of starting to emerge. And Confrontation, I mean, Pulp City isn't my brainchild. Pulp City is Maciej Zalowicz's brainchild. And Confrontation really is the genesis of Pulp City. As the demise of Confrontation arrived, Maciej was on a train, if I remember the story correctly, and was just sort of thinking what to do, because he was so invested into the game. And he realised he wanted to create his own game, and that's how Pulp City started. Cut to a few years later, and I joined him in the design team along with Devon Peterson and the lead visual designer, which was Melvin DeVore. And we really sort of shaped the edition that you've got in your hands, William, which is your Pulp City Supreme Edition.
Right.
And it was quite a journey really getting to there. From kind of helping out in the first edition, sort of. Play testing and advice in terms of sort of language, etc. And for game terminology, because I'm a kind of a keyword type gamer, if that makes sense. I like things for consistently. And then we had the brainchild of creating a whole new edition, which meant, changing 130 odd gaming profiles, which ended up being 190 cards by the time we finished the Supreme Edition Kickstarter. So kind of that's my potted history of how I got here. I mean, I'm a huge comics fan, huge comics movies fan. Been reading comics since '79. So I absolutely sort of love the medium, love the genre. You can give me a sci-fi comic, I'll probably put it to one side. Give me a superhero comic, and I'm very happy.
Right. Right. Well, I distinctly recall many games of champions and villains and vigilantes myself. I might even have, I think I still have a PDF of Champions, but I don't know if I still have a hard copy of the book. Unfortunately, that's sometimes how it goes. So in that process, as you were exploring games as a young man, what was your favorite game out of all of the ones that you were playing?
DC Heroes goes without saying. So I don't know if you saw that game or its sort of second or third editions. There was another company in the early 2000s called Pulsar Games, picked it up at the end, the game engine, something called the Mayfair Exponential Game Engine. And the idea behind that was we want to be able to create street level heroes and the guy who can move planets and have them operate in the same game. And that kind of blew my mind in terms of sort of the design principles behind that.
I don't think I remember the DC Heroes box, but I remember the Marvel Heroes box set
so
game.
it was around about the same time. I think Marvel Heroes, the basic edition, came out like a year or so before. And then Mayfair Games came out with DC Heroes, and I think a year later you had Marvel Advanced. And then a couple of years after that, you had DC Second Edition, which really kind of crystallized sort of the gaming engine. By the time the third edition rolled around, it wasn't as big a step change as first to second to third, if that kind of makes sense.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that was my go-to game, because I just created characters. Ad infinitum for that.
Right. Well, superhero games are fun because sometimes it seems like when we play a fantasy game or a sci-fi setting, you're still somewhat limited to, even if you're a human or an alien, there's still these parameters which you still operate in. And then there's Superman or the equivalent that you get the option to create within one of those games, where you just kind of blow the doors off of any kind of concept of limitations for your character. So
or scaling between them. You want everybody to kind of do something meaningful.
Yeah.
So
and that kind of principle is really carried over to sort of a lot of the design of the characters in Pulp City. What we want them all to have is like their own unique personality, their own unique flavor. Or even the lowly level 1 Supremes should have their own utility, even against level 2 Supremes or level 3 Supremes.
Right. Yeah. Because as we've talked to a lot of independent developers, and this is one of the things that I think both of us have really noticed in that marketplace of independent developers, is a real desire to not have that one obsolete piece in a game where it's a piece of the game, but everybody that plays goes, nobody ever takes that. It seems like the independent developers are really keen on avoiding that. Not that the larger companies don't try and avoid that, but it almost seems like a focus of the independent guys to go, everything has to really have a purpose.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a theme we've noticed, and that's a good theme. I like that theme.
I'm a nerd at heart. I've got to admit it. Not just a geek, but a nerd. I love numbers and crunching numbers. So I have a spreadsheet. I'm going to admit this. Macho knows about it. Devon knows about it, and maybe a few playtesters are aware of it. I mapped every single Pulp City character into a spreadsheet, so we could actually regulate when we put new characters together. What was a typical profile? So there is an engine sitting behind things about sort of decision making, and any characters that I put forwards in terms of design, I always try and design weak to strong rather than strong down to weak, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, Eric.
Okay, so it's fair to say that the comic book world and these old comic-esque games from the past are what kind of inspired you in your work on Pulp City. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, as I say, it's Maciej's brainchild, so I don't want to take credit where it's not due. Maciej's sort of name is written large through the book. Just happen to have my copy there to sort of
matching copies.
And he is very, it was very much his creation, which we sort of supported and have since taken on development from. But the original ethos for Pulp City had comic book stereotypes in there. but it had so many more kind of components to it as well. You can
Mhm.
see 80s action blockbuster characters. So if you look
Okay.
at Howler from the ARC, which is the Ape Revolution Committee, he's basically styled after Stallone's Cobra from the movie of the same name.
Yes.
You
Okay.
know, you've got Gorilla in there. You know, he's got a vest, he's got a headband, and he's got a minigun. You don't get much more 80s than that. And
and
speaking of which,
Speaking
Mac
of which,
happens to
there he
have
is.
one.
yeah. So you've got those tropes, but then you've got kind of the horror tropes as well, with the likes of the Bloodwatch, the Necroplane, the Coven. The bad guys seem to do the horror a little bit more.
Mhm.
But we've got the kung fu stuff in there from the kind of classic kung fu tropes.
Yeah.
And we had loads of fun coming up with sort of crazy names for actions for the guys who are in the way or are in the Jade cult. So we've got all of these sort of different ideas. So it's not what you would call a straight superhero game by any stretch.
Right.
We've described it as a sort of blockbuster skirmish game, or misspelt, as you may have noticed on the spine of the book. But the idea behind that was it was a mishmash of every idea in an action movie that you could imagine, all into one game.
Okay.
Yeah. Like a bad action movie. Those bad action movies that were good, like
Yeah.
Cobra. Because
Yeah.
I love Cobra, and it's like Action Jackson. Those movies.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got all of that flavor in there, but you've got high tech, you've got kind of robots, you've got aliens, you've got monsters, you've got all of those things. And if it's a pulpy idea and kind of lowercase people, that idea of sort of quite entertaining, kind of thrilling, action sort of orientated or adventurous kind of literature or storytelling, it's all in there somewhere.
Right.
Cool.
So now, since we've already kind of gotten an idea of the setting, you can only describe superhero pulp setting so many times before you start repeating yourself. But how did you end up involved in the project? How did you? Because I'm sure everybody wants to know, simply because so they can try and become involved in a project too.
So by accident.
Best way.
So I bought my first Pulp City minis probably within about the first 6 months, 12 months of them being released, because I just wanted them for generic supers gaming at the time. I hadn't really sort of considered the game. Bought a few, painted them up, and thought, oh, no, these are a step above in terms of quality of casting and design and sort of thinking around the miniatures than a lot of the competition out there at that time. So I thought, well, what is it that's so special about this? Then I started looking at the game, and then I realised, actually, this is the game for me. Started playing the game. This was in first edition, really loved it, and then started harassing Matche with every single idea that I could come up with where I thought there might be a gap in the range or in design or anything like that. So then I became part of the games development team, and we did a lot of the support around the proofreading of the first hardback edition. Which is on one of my other shelves. I can get a opinion of that for you in a moment. And that was kind of my main sort of role in there, was just more sort of proofreading, etc., etc. But by the time the sort of cycle came around to thinking about a new edition, the Supreme edition, the games development team had pretty much sort of coalesced to Matche, Devon Peterson, myself, and as I say, Melvin DeVore, who was the visual lead for most of the sort of the visual design of the game, of the book, of the cards, you name it. He's threaded through that. And in terms of sort of what happened then is Matche set us a challenge. Pulp City could stay as it was, could grow, could be refined, but be much of the same as it was in its first hardback edition, or it could become something else. So I kind of took a little bit of a step. As I said before, I'm a bit of a nerd. I like to look for patterns in things. I look for design in things. And what I noticed was, almost by default, there was something that I eventually called the effect system that sat there in the old rules. But each time it was described in an action to say, if you roll this against that, you achieve this, this, and this, and this. And if you beat it by that, you achieve that. So what I did was I codified everything and created what was the effect system. And if you follow that sort of train through, you'll see games like Guild Ball have done something similar sort of since then with their playbooks. Obviously, they're quite cassette. You have a few choices as you go along. With our effect system, it's pretty open-ended. You have a menu of effect options. And effectively, I presented treatment saying, this is what I think we could do. the treatment kind of got torn up. We had to change the effect system, but the basic principles were there. And, you know, you've got to kill your babies in this. And, you know, and I hate to use sort of that phrase kind of.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Sorry, kill your darlings, sorry, I think is a better phrase, isn't it? Kill your darlings. The idea that don't get too hung up on something is about the best idea getting through. And that's when I started to really get involved in the design quite heavily.
Right. Okay. Well, I know one of the things, and I wasn't familiar with first edition, and I'm new to second edition just since we had started all this. And like I said, Eric and I, we just love anything independent. It's just, I wouldn't have started a convention just about independent games if I didn't. But one of the things that I found really cool that I liked, and I can't off the top of my head think of a game. I mean, I guess Guild Ball kind of does it with the assigning, but I love the action point pool.
Yeah.
Was that an element of first edition as well?
So that was from first edition. Okay. What we did was when we decided, right, we're going to go ahead and nothing is on the table, nothing is off the table. That was a principle that we stuck to. What we all agreed was we liked the action point pool. It became refined in Supreme Edition. So in the first edition, every character, sorry, I've just got to bat away a cat who's about to fiddle with the computer there. In first edition, every character contributed a set amount of action points based on their level. We kind of held that principle into the Supreme Edition, but what we said was, if you're a supporting type character, or one of those characters who runs really fast or flies really fast, moves around like a speeder, or if they're an infiltrator like a ninja type, or if they're a support character, something like Blood Rose from the Blood Watch, or Virus from the ARC, then they should contribute more than the kind of straight out and out fighters. So what we created was an action economy in there, and it's very much around resource management. And that resource management is your heaviest hitters contributes the least amount of points to the pool. Your least heavy hitters can help everybody, but they're not going to take down the big bad guys.
Right.
And so that stayed, but it got refined between editions.
I rather like that piece of it where you did have less for your big guys.
Yeah.
Because it like we spoke about earlier, it makes you have to take those support guys and it gives them a genuine function within the game where you're not just saying, I don't really want to take this person because they can't take out the heavy hitter, especially your guys that are all about list building. Would you say, it's kind of off of our normal question line, sorry, Eric, would you say that Pulp City lends itself more to a competitive nature or more to a narrative nature?
I think the audience and the fan base out there is probably more narrative. They want to just enjoy the game.
Sure,
we haven't had a community a tournament-based community yet. I think there is the opportunity for that, but you look at games that are broken through, like Guild Ball. You can see how ultra competitive. And I think I've played tournaments in the past. For me, it was the old Warhammer 40,000 grand tournaments, which used to take place in the UK. Mainly a weekend of entertainment and drinking. I've got a bit, but what that taught me was, you need to have a reasonably competitive list to turn up to have a fighting chance. I think Pulp City, there is no one sort of single build which kind of breaks everything. And part of it is down to the beauty of team building. We have two ways that you build a team. You can either build a team by alignment, your heroes or your villains, or in the case of ARC and the gorilla miniature that you showed earlier, he's a hero or a villain, so he can go on both sides.
Right.
But then you lose some of the benefits of being in a faction build. If you're in a faction build, you have sort of very, very sort of specific features which tend to sort of synergies, which tend to sort of cross over from different factions. For every faction has a different play style. Necroplane is about flight and sort of aerial supremacy. You'll see that the Blood Watch are pretty heavy hitters, but they don't have any minions around them. The ARC have a flexibility and some very, very scary characters, which on paper don't look scary. Get Lemertable painted up very soon, and you will destroy your any friendships that you've got. You'll understand what I mean.
Well, it's quarantine right now, so I don't have to worry about destroying any friendships.
Absolutely. So I kind of think there isn't kind of one set. One set kind of team that kind of beats all, if that makes sense. And we've always tried to have that ethos of, if it's coming new, it shouldn't just, you know, invalidate everything that's gone before.
Right.
It should really sort of support and supplement, maybe offer something similar or offer something radically different. The radically different characters are the hard ones to get right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you kind of, you know what your basics are, your building blocks for designing other characters. When you do something so different, you think, is that the right thing to do? And you have to test it and break it and then decide, no, maybe not.
Well, go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say I like that it makes like every character important in some form of way. Like you said, it's just not, okay, I got these extra points, let's throw this guy in, he's not gonna do much. He is doing something.
Yeah.
So
I mean, what we try to do as well with the missions, the encounters that are in the plots, actually, for to use a technical term, that are in the book, is to really kind of stretch the team thin across the battlefield, trying to avoid that kind of middle table melee. But you know, that's not always easy to do. But it's a lot about positioning. So you'll tend to find the first first round will often be about positioning. Not much will happen. Then as soon as somebody makes that first move in round 2, everything kicks off in terms of sort of the actions. Dice is king is what I've always said since we created Supreme Edition. Stack up as many dice as you can onto your big hitters. You know, that's the key in many ways. But it's getting the right synergies, because if they haven't got the action points, they're not gonna do what you need.
Yeah. No matter how tough you are, if you can't move to go get somebody, you're not gonna do anything.
Yeah.
Okay, what you got, Mac?
Well, actually, we got the setting covered, so I think we're up for the future question there, Eric.
Okay, yeah. So you got what do you guys got in the works in the future for Pulp City?
So Pulp City's an interesting time right now. You know, we've announced this publicly last year. My company, Kit Bash Games, has taken on the development of Pulp City since last year. That's been around the core Pulp City characters, but also a range of miniatures that I've developed myself, which is independent. Pulp City is more of traditional superheroes line of miniatures, and all of those characters come with Pulp City profiles. So suddenly the Pulp City range of characters available out there is way past 250 characters and growing.
Wow.
So that's a lot for me to collect.
Yeah, you better get started.
I got a little dent. I got about 50, so I got a little.
Yeah, I know. I've got to admit, out of my Pulp City minis, I think I'm around about 150 painted, so I'm still quite way behind.
Wow.
But yeah, so I mean, the big thing for Pulp City next year, probably, I was hoping this year, but the COVID-19 outbreak has really sort of impacted development in a number of ways. Is going to be a kind of a soft relaunch Kickstarter, and I say soft relaunch because we're not changing the core rules, not changing anything like that. The cards will still look the same, but it'll be soft relaunch, as in, we had 18 or 20 characters that have been built up, and that we'd built up post delivery of Supreme Edition, but we just hadn't been able to kind of get out to market. The distribution model, I think, for indie games has changed a lot in the face of Kickstarter. Kickstarter, I think, has helped a lot of indie games. It's probably hurt the relationship with friendly local game stores in some ways. And there are so many indie games out there. How can a game store decide which games it's going to carry? Really, really tough. We've got a depth of range of 200 models. So, you know, it's a very challenging range to carry, something like that. We are looking at packaging to break that down into kind of nice bite-sized chunks, core sets, etc. So we've been developing that. But it's trying to get the offer right, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And part of that is we felt, well, we need a bit of a soft relaunch because things have kind of drifted. So we want to get those unreleased minis out there, plus a load of new concepts that we've been working on behind the scenes and kind of revealing sneak peeks here and there. And I'd be happy to maybe reveal a couple through the podcast so we can pick some out for you. And
we won't say no to any kind of reveals.
I'll get that over to you, so for sure. But effectively, what the campaign, the next Kickstarter campaign will be, is the core pledges will be around the release of those 18 to 20 miniatures. We have upwards of 30 additional Supremes that we could potentially release as stretch goals. So it could be 50 new characters, sort of just landing as part. Depends on how far the campaign goes. I don't know if you've ever looked at our 2 previous campaigns. The first one went to $104,000, so we
Wow.
did pretty well with several hundred backers. I think over nearly 500 backers. And the last campaign, which was to launch 2 teams, we ended up with 176 backers, and we went to $35,000 or $36,000. So we know there's an appetite out there, there's an audience out there.
Sure.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
want to get that relaunched, but then we also want to be in game store friendly kind of mode as well, in terms of having packaging and sets that can go into a game store, and it's easy for a game store to sell because it'll be kind of a pre-packed, fairly balanced team of 9 or 10 levels. Pick up 2 of these starter sets, one versus the other, and you've got 2 teams to play off against each other.
That's great.
So
Yeah.
they're the kind of that'll be for next year, and then the year after, I'm hoping that we can finally land the expansion book, which will be Pulp City Power Up. So I've been recently working on some solo rules, which are free to download in a kind of beta version, which are would be accessible through the website, but the website's going through a transition from servers to the Kit Bash servers. So that's kind of in the pipeline. And alongside that, there'll be 2 Kit Bash games, Kickstarters running as well, at least maybe 3, purely for its own range. For all of those characters, we'll have Pulp City profiles as well.
Okay.
So we've got lots and lots of characters incoming.
Lots of stuff for you to paint, Mac.
Yeah, right. That's awesome. I do know we have our buddy Alan, who is the owner of Discover Games. He's actually a good ways from us. He's in just outside Atlanta, Georgia, and we have, well, everyone in our group will say I did it. They won't say we. I'm just trying to blame other people besides myself. Firmly corrupted him. So he actually carries quite a few independent games and is really helping to push that market. And some of what you were saying is exactly what he always says. That 2-player starter box, that starter set that somebody can come and grab and pick up, those go off of his shelves way faster than any individual blister pack models, until once you have your 2-player starter and everything, and then you need the gorilla with the minigun. It's in the blister pack. Then it's different.
Well, you'll be pleased to know Gorilla will be in the main set for ARC, but to make it even easier, as I say, the range currently is around about 200 models, give or take. That's really hard for a retailer to sort of pop into, to store racks, retail racks, in terms of how many SKUs, how do you order, how do you know what to order? It's an unknown quantity, and it's a very, very difficult proposition. So our plan alongside the kind of core starter sets is something called booster sets. Now, you've probably seen the powerhouses, the really big guys that all of the factions have. In the booster sets, we're probably going to stick in the leader model and the powerhouse. So you have a core set, you have your booster set, suddenly you have 16, 17, 18 levels to choose from. And an ideal game is probably 10 to 12 levels. You've got a lot of flexibility, a lot of choice just from those 2 sets, and without kind of overloading, hopefully, the retailer with too many SKUs. So it's kind of just getting that right and kind of doing the working out of that. We have the first few sorts of, sleeves set up in terms of sort of how we pack that. The packaging would be aligned to the packaging we did for the 2 new hero and villain starter sets when we did Supreme Edition. So it kind of all fit in together in the same range. It could be stacked on the shelf sort of very neatly. It all has the kind of Pulp City branding and sort of, I think has quite an attractive and sort of distinctive branding, which fits in the kind of branding that we've done so far. But I absolutely recognise it must be really, really challenging for a game store owner or manager to kind of decide what do we stock, because there is so much choice. I think we've been in a golden age of indie gaming. Effectively.
Yeah.
I think the internet has globalised that. I think the internet has democratised it, and I think crowdfunding has also democratised it. But at the same time, it's probably made it even harder for the gaming stores to kind of fit into that, into that kind of new world order, really.
Yeah, and a lot of the times in our experience, what ends up happening is for an indie game to come in, what a game store ideally needs, they could be 100% on board with the game. They could love the game, but they need someone in the store who's going to be a champion for that game. And then that game blossoms within the store. As long as there's that one champion who's excited about it, they can come in and show off the game, and the store can work with them. If you do X amount of demos, you get discount, whatever it is. But that champion makes huge difference.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's something we need to get out there again. We had a program years ago heralds the idea, of that kind of champion. But I think we need to revitalize that and rethink of it in a kind of context, 6, 8, 10 years on, which is quite a different world than we had sort of 10 years ago.
Sure.
We were all on forums 10 years ago. Well, now actually social media has moved on massively, and trying to promote and sort of maintain the profile of games has changed dramatically from really from what people were reliant on previously. We are in a different world.
No doubt. No doubt. Now, in regards to the Kickstarter, when you guys are ready, if you would like to come back on with us,
Absolutely.
we'd love to talk to you right before it to kind of help
yeah,
push
maybe
it out there.
go over
Absolutely.
a breakdown of the Kickstarter, kind of what people are looking at for levels and whatnot. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, we're going to try and make it super simple. That's our ethos of all the Kickstarters we've done so far. We've tried not to overcomplicate them. I mean, the next Kickstarter I'm doing has one core pledge level.
That's great. I like those.
Second pledge level. For this one, I'm kind of anticipating almost, for the Pulp City one, it's going to probably have 3 core pledge levels. One will be all the heroes and hero villains, all the villains and hero villains, or all of the core 18 models. At a kind of at a reduced value cost to what they would be from the retail store.
Yeah.
And then we'll unlock miniatures. I mean, I'm about 2/3 of the way through the commissions for that. So as I say, over 30 planned for it. So 20 of those are currently sculpted and sat in a box in my little hobby room.
Ooh, very nice.
Yeah. So, and what I've tried to do is utilize sculptors who've been working with Pulp City, over the years.
Sure.
So, currently I have Paul Muller, who's sculpted some of the Necroplane models previously, is sculpting a new character called Riptide, who's basically a slightly aquatically powered alien, but undead as well at the same time. So, Jason Momoa, look out, is all I can say. And let's see if I can get you some sneak art on Riptide.
Oh, we would love to share that.
Yeah, I haven't seen the previews of the sculpts, but Paul has started. But we're also introducing a new role as well into the game, and this is going to be a bit of a kind of a step change for us. Currently, the game has 8 roles in there. So you have your brawler. They fight things in base-to-base contact. You have your blaster, who shoots at things with their energy blaster or guns. You've got your tank, who's the guy who protects everybody else by sort of getting into base to base with his buddies. You've then got your support, who's your AP generator for the team, and your buffer for the team. You've got your infiltrator, who's your ninja, often a little bit fragile, but they're scalpel that if you use them well can really kind of swing things around or put pressure on your opponent. Or your speeder, that model that you need to get from one corner of the battlefield to the other corner of the battlefield in the same round, that's your speeder. And then you've got your leader. Your leader does everything pretty well. They'll give AP, they'll give buffs, and they can fight. And then you've got the powerhouses, the big guys, everybody's favourites, because it's big models. Who doesn't like big models?
Yeah.
Throw loads of dice. They smush other characters in 1 or 2 hits. They're fun, but they absolutely rely on everybody else in the team. And we're going to be bringing a new role called mascots. Mascots are sort of the antithesis of the powerhouse. So these will be the smallest guys on the team. And the idea of the mascot is they kind of make everybody better. But if you take the mascot out, you do a big hit to the team. And that hit will be some penalties that they'll suffer for a round and negative effects. So it's a piece that costs nothing to take. So you make a risk-reward decision to take it. But the thing is, it gives you those buffs as long as it's lasting. And if you take it out, it's not just that those buffs go. You take a negative hit for it going as well. So there's a real risk-reward decision. And every single one of the core factions the main factions will be getting their own mascots. We've started to preview a lot of those recently. And the last 2 of the core faction concepts are in work in progress stage. So I'm pretty pleased that we'll be able to show off Rusty and Jester fairly soon, I hope. And that will be an interesting kind of new development for the game. Again, that material will be made available through free download, so it's not like you're searching for it. It will be accessible to all players, and eventually that will be an expansion book as well, the mascots. So that's going to be a quite interesting new development, I think, for the game, and one that we're really excited about. Mache I say he's handed development over to me, but he's loved seeing these new mascots sort of coming through and keep saying to me, "We've got to create a mini game around these guys alone. Just got to have a mascot game." Because some of the concepts for them are crazy, shall we say?
Yeah, that's awesome, because I get the negatives, because nobody wants to see crypto go down, right?
No, exactly. So, you know, if crypto goes down, everybody feels bad.
Exactly. Even Lex is feeling a little bad about it at that point. All right, so this next one we have, this has proven to be, I think only in one instance, this wasn't the hardest question that we asked to any developer. What's your favorite faction or character in Pulp City?
Oh, okay.
That's usually the response we get.
We've actually got a lot of factions out there, and I might have to answer with two, which is a kind of I know it's dodging the question slightly. So the one that may be closest to my heart is the Way, which are our martial arts leisure characters. So you've got a lot of kind of kung fu film influences on those guys, and it's the first faction that I took the lead development on all of the characters for. Gotcha. They weren't perfect, and not all the ideas that I went forwards with sort of made it. But that one's always got a special place, you know, in my heart for me. Yeah. Especially because I love, you know, Iron Fist comic books when they're done well, stuff like that kind of thing. But if I was going to pick another, it would probably be the Supreme Alliance.
Okay.
So the Supreme Alliance is our love letter to Marvel Comics. And when you start looking at the archetypes, each archetype in turn, you can see where we've been inspired. And the same goes for Red Republic. Both of those, the Cold War factions, were very much our love letter to sort of Marvel Comics, but done with a Pulp City spin.
Okay.
Nice.
Cool.
We'll let you get away with picking two, since.
Thank you. Or three.
Well, we'll say you just mentioned the third one in passing.
All right. So, other than Pulp City, what games do you currently play? Like, what is kind of your relaxing games to get away from the design work and the working on Pulp City?
I mean, working on Pulp City has been a lot of my time, so it's kind of cut into my gaming time more so since I've done the lead development. But games that I've enjoyed over recent years, I quite enjoyed the tactical element of Night Models, Batman Miniatures game. Although I haven't played that sort of since 2nd edition. I enjoyed X-Wing when it came out. I really loved the mechanics and the sort of simplicity of it, and I quite liked the kind of card chasing that went on in the different packs, and I could appreciate the design sort of ethos that went into a lot of things. I really enjoyed 7 TV from Crooked Dice. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Oh yes,
that's one we got on the list.
Yep.
So Carl is a fantastic guy. I absolutely love everything he's done. He's expanded that, you know, into something phenomenal. He's got his pulp setting, he's got all his rules, he's got his post-apocalyptic, he's got his core kind of spy-fi, he's got fantasy in the works. You know, I don't know how he finds the time at all to sort of do this kind of stuff. But, you know, it creates a very enjoyable sort of gameplay experience. And I also design a lot of games for my own entertainment, you know, that haven't necessarily been released. So when I started Kit Bash Games, it was when I left Pulp City as a partner. You know, we were all happy, sort of, you know, for me it was the right time to go and to sort of scratch the design itch. I started writing games myself, so I wrote a set of rules called Squad Wars, which was, you know, loosely around elite soldiers facing against a fascist kind of horde of, you know, possibly blue clothed soldiers. You know, G.I. Joe might have been the influence for that one. Maybe. And the idea behind that was to sort of try, well, what would an asymmetrical approach to gaming where you've got really powerful good guys and a kind of horde of really kind of rubbish grunts, and can it be an interesting sort of gameplay experience? So I've done that. I've done rules for sort of, you know, kind of a Masters of the Universe sort of, you know, for personal use, Masters of the Universe sort of style game. And with all of this, it's just to sort of try and solve design problems in those games as well, and try out new things. Last weekend, I wrote a new rule set from start to finish because I needed something to do in lockdown. So that's in playtest right now. So that's kind of the idea behind that. Is it's a really simple superhero set of rules. Just you pick up and play, and the idea that, you know, a family that's locked down, got some miniatures, could grab these rules and be playing and have a game within an hour. You know, just what they've got in the house, and not kind of have to think about all the kind of plethora of stuff that they need. So, you know, I tend to occupy myself a lot with design. I don't play anywhere near as much as I used to enjoy playing, I've got to admit. But, you know, the games that I played most recently probably would be stuff like 7TV.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, Eric just got a box full of stuff from Crooked Dice. Well, one of the distributors here in the States, but a bunch of Crooked Dice miniatures just a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah, yeah, fantastic models and stuff, and
Oh, yeah.
a lot of potential for
Yeah.
in any of your games with that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh,
So when Carl is on, I've got a question that you need to ask him.
Okay.
He's been in discussions with Patrick Keith,
Okay.
you know, the guy behind Bombshell Games.
Yep.
And Patrick's been doing a Patreon, and each month he does a different theme on his sculpting Patreon.
Yep.
And in May, the theme has been Pulp. Oddly enough, that fits very much with Pulp TV, and I believe there's a discussion between the two of them. So I think you need to nail down Carl on that question.
Put the screws to them. Put the screws to them.
All right. What's going on with Patrick and 7TV? Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Fair enough. All right. One thing we like to do as we approach the end of the interview is give us your elevator pitch for why people should play Pulp City. When you talk to Eric and I, we're suckers. We're probably already in. I'm good.
You're in.
I'm there. I'm already there. Eric, he'll cave in the next couple of days. I have no concerns about that. Someone who is walking in there going, yeah, I don't need another game. Give us your elevator pitch on why people should throw in with Pulp City.
Okay, so if you wanting to play every action movie that you've ever enjoyed, whether it's a superhero action movie or an 80s action movie, Pulp City gives you that. It's a fully interactive environment. You can destroy buildings, throw cars at each other, and you've got an amazing range of models. There's great depth in terms of the character roster out there, and there's great depth in terms of the opportunities of gameplay. And it's fun, and you get to roll loads of dice. What more do you want to do than roll loads of
Handfuls of dice.
Right, handfuls
It's
of dice.
always great.
I would add to that elevator pitch too that the artwork is stunning. I love the artwork from the cover to the cards. I was fortunate enough that I stumbled on someone on eBay who was selling their Kickstarter from the first. So that's how I picked up the majority of the models that I have. And I've got a stack of cards.
Yeah,
it's probably 5.5 inches tall.
Yeah,
that I'm currently in the process of sleeving because I'm that guy with my cards.
I have to sleeve all cards. I like a write-on marker. Then you've got to wipe the write-on marker off after the end of the game.
Yep.
It's good gamer management. You know, it's important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Eric.
All right, Liam, do you have anything on your hobby desk right now that's, you mentioned you're working on Pulp City, but anything outside of Pulp City?
Yeah, I'm kind of working on my slow burn Master of the Universe personal project. So there's a few producers out there of miniatures which are sympathetic to the Masters of the Universe kind of.
I may or may not have some of those on my shelf painted. Maybe.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm slowly adding to those ranks and just trying to kind of really kind of get through that project because I wrote that game for myself last year. Still haven't played it. Why? I need to have painted teams on the Bellwatch. I cannot play unpainted.
Oh, yeah.
Painted is the only way.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I've seen your name crop up in a couple of those Masters of the Universe and G.I. Joe groups. On more than one occasion, I may or may not have.
Yeah,
I love my Masters of the Universe models. They're wonderful.
Oh, I'd love a big box game. Somebody to sort of take that IP.
Somebody, yes, please.
And if they did a movie, I know they talked about a movie. I want them to lean into the IP and not lean away from it. I want them to just say, let's do every crazy thing that's in there.
Embrace the ridiculousness.
That's it ought to be so sci-fi and sorcery and colourful. That's all it is.
That's right. Okay, so next and last big question we have, which will inevitably result in more rambling from us anyway, but where can our listeners find Pulp City? Where can they track you down, look for you?
Okay, so right now we are in the middle of a server change. So we put a note on our Facebook page to sort of, you know, put our hands up and say apologies for that. We're moving the servers over to the Kit Bash game servers. It just makes sense that since I'm leading on development to pull all of that together. That means the store is temporarily down, the main website is temporarily down. As soon as that's back up, Pulpcity.com will be the domain name to find, and the store link. I can get that out to you, what it will be. Hopefully that will be back up in the next few days, a week at the most.
Okay.
Awesome.
And
Well,
do you
go ahead,
guys
Eric.
have a Facebook page too that people
Yeah,
can
so we've
look
got
at
Pulp
stuff?
City Facebook page. We've also got Citizens of Pulp City Facebook group, which has about 450 members.
Okay.
It continues to grow. I may or may not drop the odd sneak peek on the Facebook group, as well as on the page. So follow the page for everything, except for the stuff that you see in the group, and that's even more.
So what we'll do for everyone that's listening, we will of course have links for the Facebook group and the Facebook page up there, so you can check it out. I will double check before I post up the video, but I believe Noble Knight Games here in the States carries some of the Pulp City stuff, and I'll throw that link up there as well. And then we will update our Facebook page once you guys get the domain
Brilliant.
name
Thank
up.
you.
We'll throw that up there as well. After that is back up and active. And so guys, please go check out Pulp City. It's a really cool game. I haven't had the opportunity because of coronavirus to throw it on the table, but I've had the opportunity to go through the book, read the book. I've started working on some of my models. I even have a few right here that my 10-year-old is working on. He's working on.
Now you're gonna have to bring that closer to the camera.
Oh, here you go. This is my 10-year-old's work right now.
Oh, awesome.
So
ankle biters.
Yep, he's working on a few models himself so that we can get a game in. But don't forget, guys, you can find us on the Coastal Con Facebook page. You can find us on the Indie Invasion Facebook page. You can also find the podcast will be available on Google Play, Spotify, iTunes, Pocket Cast, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Podbean, and TuneIn. We try to be everywhere. We do our very best to do that. And this has been a real blast. Leon, I cannot thank you enough for coming on. I would also like to point out to our listeners that Leon was gracious enough to contact us about talking about Pulp City. And as a new podcast, we were super excited that a developer contacted us. Right, Eric? I was like, oh, hey, Eric, somebody contacted us. This is awesome. So, Leon, thank you very much. If you have any parting words of wisdom or anything for our listeners, fire away.
Don't forget your support. Make sure you've got your support characters.
All right. Eric, if you would like to take us out.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in and checking out this awesome independent game. And remember, when you're out there playing those games, prepare for the invasion. We'll talk to you guys later.